So thank you, everyone. I'm Laura Espinosa. I work at the Epidemic Intelligence team at the European CDC. And in this short presentation, I will try to guide you through this tool that was published last year called Epitweetr, and a bit how we currently use it in our team. Next slide, please. So this is a bit the outline showing first why Epitweetr, a bit on some of the characteristics, how we use it, and I will end up with the Epitweetr community. Next slide, please. So first question is also to understand a bit, do you use social media for public health purposes? And that may include early detection, event monitoring, misinformation, or other aspects. So if you can go to the Mentimeter, menti.com, I think the code is the same as you have been using during the full day. So maybe you can just switch to the Menti survey so we can see how many people are responding. Thank you. Okay, so we already have one reply with data, extracting data manually. Thank you. So there are different options, whether you use it, if it's manually extracted, automatically extracted, or whether you are not using it, but you know what could be the added value of this data for public health, or maybe even that you are not aware so far, and hopefully after this presentation, you will know a bit more. So let's see. So for the moment, we have no replies for automatic extraction of data, which that's good because actually that's one of the objectives of Epitweetr. So I'm glad to see that it could possibly help all of those that are already doing the work with the manual extraction, but maybe it will take less time for you to invest on that part. Okay, good. I think we can go back to the slides. Thank you for your replies. Next slide, please. Perfect. So just a bit to put things into background. So what is epidemic intelligence? It's the early identification of potential health threats, and it also includes the verification, assessment, and investigation. So we use different sources at the epidemic intelligence team at the CDC, going from the traditional surveillance data sources to what is called event-based surveillance. So basically media or social media coming from official sources, or more, as we say, informal sources. And social media is within that branch. And there are two ways that actually you can treat this data, with manual monitoring and automated monitoring. So if we need to go back in 2019 when this project started, and at that time we had a clear process on how to extract data from different social media platforms, manual monitoring, process that, verify that data, and use it in our daily activities. So next slide, please. So then the question would be, why going into this of the automation when there was already a process that actually showed that it was working? Well, one of the aspects was to increase sensitivity. So with the automated process, we would be able to detect more signals, especially those that are considered low signals, so not so much spread into the different social media platforms that we were following. It would also reduce the human intervention. So instead of having all the different epidemic intelligence experts screening through the different social media platforms with a predefined list of users to follow, it would be the system, the tool in this case, to tell you when there was something that would require your input. And of course, the last aspect, to improve timeliness. So to have a near real-time detection system that will allow us to be really as an early warning tool. Next slide, please. And that's when Epitweetr was initiated. So again, it was end of 2019 that we did a small prototype without any automation. And then early 2020, we included the different aspects that end up making this R-based tool, Epitweetr, that was published first time in October 2020. So this is the first tool that allows to automatically monitor trends. Not only show them, I will show with a screenshot in a dashboard all the data, but also having some interaction with the user to alert when something is out of the ordinary. And the aim of this tool is to early detect any threat through signals. And by signals, we mean an unusual increase in the number of tweets for a specific topic, a specific place, and a specific time. This tool was initially developed for following infectious diseases, and it can be extended to any topic possible you can imagine. It's really easy just by changing the list of the topics with the keywords that you want to include, and then Epitweetr will do the work for you. It has different aspects or components for machine learning, one of them being the geolocation, and that's to extract, and I'll explain a bit later, the geolocation from users, but also from the events in the tweet. Also signal detection and email alerts, as I mentioned, to ensure this interaction with the user. So it's not really that you need to go there to the platform and check what is that could be of interest, but it will be the tool to tell you when you should go in. And as I said, it's R-based, but we really wanted to combine this idea of having these experts that may have more experience in programming, so they could get the functions from these R packets, develop further, maybe use some of them, plug in their own signal detection algorithms and combine them, because also this code is all of them available in GitHub. And there's also the other aspect. What about those that actually don't have that programming capacity? That's perfectly fine. It has what is called Shiny Apps, so it's really easy with 2 lines that are already included in the manual to launch this application. And there you can basically do the same thing you would do with the functions, but without any knowledge, previous knowledge required on programming or on R. And as I say, it's free, it's open source, so anyone can download the package or even check the code and also use it with the free available API from Twitter to get the data. Next slide, please. So we go now to the next question, and also a bit to understand how much in detail I should go to some of this explanation. So have you heard about Epitweetr before? And we have there 4 options. Maybe we can go directly, thank you, to the Menti survey. So maybe this is the first time you have heard about it, or maybe you just know and have some idea on basic concepts, or maybe you already tried some of the features, or actually you are kind of an expert on Epitweetr. So really part from our really active Epitweetr community. So I see that there's at least a big amount, some people that this is the first time that heard about the tool. So again, I'm really happy to hear that, because then that means that I have a lot to tell you, and possibly to ensure that then you can go back and explore a bit with the tool and the different features. Good. Thank you, everyone, for replying. So maybe we can go back to the slides. Great. So how does the tool work? So as any other R package, you need a computer and you need internet. The computer or the device you use can be really something like your own laptop, or can be something more advanced like a virtual machine or any server. That depends on the capacity. And we really wanted to build a Epitweetr to ensure that anyone could access. So any type of operating system as well, Windows, Linux, Mac, Epitweetr will work. Then the next step will be to install the package from the CRAN, which is the repository for this type of software. And there's some information to set up this tool. So basically, we made it quite configurable, so you can decide a lot of aspects, from the language you want to include when searching from the tweets, the topics, the keywords, to the different lists of subscribers that will receive these alerts, the time that you will time span between each of the pipelines to be running, the name of the countries, which regions you want to follow. So there's really a lot of information that can be set up there. Then there's what we call one-time download. So it's kind of some prerequisites, which include the language vectors, and that helps the machine learning component to extract the geolocation, and also other aspects like Java or GeoNames, which is a public database with different names in different languages for locations. Then once you have everything set up, you can start running the 2 pipelines of Epitweetr. And the current ones, it has 2 pipelines, one for the data collection and another one which is to process this data and send possible alerts. The way it will work, you will enter your credentials, so either Twitter account, or if you happen to have a Twitter developer app, you can also enter that, and you can request that. It's free if you use specific APIs to get the data. And once you have your credentials, then Epitweetr will start collecting the tweets. Then these tweets will be moved to the second pipeline, and the first step of the processing would be to try to geolocate this data. Then it will aggregate. Again, I will go a bit more into details in how we work with Epitweetr on our daily basis. And then if there's something considered out of the ordinary in these tweets, and that's only currently based on mathematical algorithms, then it will send an email to the epidemic intelligence expert saying, look, I found that there's something unusual, please have a look. And these pipelines can be run all the time, but they can also catch up from downtime times, depending on the type of machine that you have. Next slide, please. And this is a screenshot of the current version of Epitweetr. So this is the Shiny app I was mentioning, and it has different tabs or pages. The first one is the dashboard. So here you can see the data that has been collected by your Epitweetr tool. And that's different figures. So you can have the time series, you can have also the map, decide whether it's the user location or the tweet location, and you can have also the most frequent subwords. There are other tabs, like, for example, alerts and geotag evaluation that goes into other features of this tool. And also the configuration tab is a really important one. That's where the users will be able to really go into details and put all the configurable settings that they need for using Epitweetr. And the last one, the troubleshoot, that's actually one addition that we included after the beta testing of the first pre-version, in which helps the user to understand if it has all the requirements to be able to run fully this Epitweetr. And if that's not the case, you will see a short message telling you what is that you have to do in order to have everything ready. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary, and I will go into each of the steps on how actually we use Epitweetr in our daily work in combination, as I mentioned, with all the other sources. So just to be clear, this is another one of the many sources that we use on our daily work, dealing with different information, not only on COVID, but on any other infectious disease that could be of relevance for our work. Next slide, please. And the first step would be to actually let Epitweetr do its work. Next slide, please. And that's what I was mentioning. So we'll start collecting data, and for that, it uses the Twitter Standard Search API version 1.1. This is freely available, so there's no fee attached to this. It has a limitation that you can only get tweets in the past 7 days, but it fits the purposes of early warning, because if we need more than 1 week to understand that there's something happening, actually the early warning and near real time is not really happening. It's not exhaustive, and it's focusing on relevance. But as I mentioned, being free and due to the objective of the tool is sufficient to be used with Epitweetr. And as I said, you have a file, Excel file, that you can configure with the different topics, keywords that you want to use. So as I said, it can literally monitor anything that is happening in Twitter. Next slide, please. Then the next step is it's about the geolocation. And that's also important because the signals will come, as I mentioned, for specific place, topic, and location. So Epitweetr collects 2 types of location and stores them for each tweet when available. One is the user information that's included in several platforms, and the other one is the structure of the tweet text. So for our work, since we are dealing with public health threats, it's actually more relevant to understand what this threat or this event is happening instead of where the user is located. Because now with the really globalized world, it's quite often the case that you are based in a place talking about something that is happening somewhere else. And that also allows to cover areas in the world that actually do not have direct access to Twitter by people tweeting about these specific events from either places from the world or using VPN connection. Next slide, please. Then the next step would be to aggregate this data to create different series, as you see there, for country counts, geolocation counts, and subwords that will be plugged to show the different figures, and also to calculate the possible signals that are behind this data. Next slide, please. I see you went one back. Can you go? Yes, perfect. And then, so the next step would be if a number of tweets surpasses the threshold, then Epitweetr will send an alert. So the subscribers will receive an email with the different information for those signals. Next slide, please. And for that, Epitweetr is using a modified early aberration reporting system algorithm, which is basically, just to put it simple, based on mean and standard deviation on the number of tweets that happen for that specific topic, place, and location in the previous X days. You can put also, you can configure that. And there are different settings that can be configurable to decide whether you want to be more sensitive, so to ensure that you don't miss anything, or whether you want to be more specific in the sense that you really get a signal that has more probabilities to be a true signal, because maybe you don't have the capacity to go through all the signals created by Epitweetr. Next slide, please. Then in this step, and as I mentioned, in this version, because we are already in the process in developing another version this year, it would be the task of the epidemic intelligence officer experts to decide whether what Epitweetr has considered an alert or a signal is actually a true signal. Next slide, please. So there are two ways to verify that. As I said, Epitweetr will send emails, and you can see there the table that is sent, included in the email sent by Epitweetr on the top of the slide, with the different characteristics, not only on the signals, but also on the methods and the different settings that were used to detect that signal. And then you can also go to the app, as I was mentioning, the tab that was called Alerts, and then check for the data that is similar to what you have received in the email. Next slide, please. And then the next step would be, if needed, maybe to search for more information or related tweets. So as you saw in those email alerts or in that in the Shiny app, you will be able to see some of the most frequent top words and the topic that generated the alert for the possible location and time, but you don't really have the raw data. Next slide. And then, yes, so maybe just to give a bit of, just one back, thank you. One thing just forgot to mention there, when searching for the tweets, you can either do it in the machine that is collecting the data, because you will have the raw data there, and there are some functions that are available in GitHub to facilitate that work, or you can just simply go to the Twitter, search for the key top words that you consider relevant, and then find the latest tweet. Next slide, please. And then just follow the usual steps of this epidemic intelligence process. So one part that is really important is this validation. So we only continue with the processing of this data if we consider the information valid and accurate. That means either coming from official sources, so for example, the Twitter account of a Ministry of Health, or whether we cross-check that information either with other official sources or even with our network to reduce any spread of misinformation from our side. And then when we consider that the information is valid, then we will analyze that information, assess, and then communicate properly and even take any action if needed, as we would do with any of our sources. Next slide, please. And then last but not least, I wanted to mention a bit about the Epitweetr community. So one of the key aspects when developing Epitweetr was to make it open source. And that was because for us, we were trying to look for a tool that will fulfill our purpose, but it was either not available with all the functionalities and requirements we needed, or either it was not clear how the methods were developed, it was not so easy to change those methods that were used. So we decided to do something R-based that can be easily changed by anyone that can have some knowledge on programming, but also it has a clear method on how this data has been collected and processed, and it gives you the power to control the data because it will be running in your machine, so you decide what to collect, how to process that, and then what to take actions upon. And again, if needed, you can even take part of the features and further develop with your own programming skills. As you see, as of yesterday, we have over 4,700 downloads of these packages, And we also activated the discussion sections in GitHub, which is a platform to share and save some code, and also where the package is actually saved. And as you can see from a small survey that we had, an anonymous survey from the different users of Epitweetr, there are different profiles, and not all of them are using for the same objective as us, like, for example, infectious diseases, like can be COVID, but it can be extended really to any topic that you consider of relevance for your work. As of now, we have done 4 external trainings through our network and also 2 workshops. One of them as part of the ECC conference called Guided that is organized every year. And we have also done different demos and short meetings like this one, in which we have presented Epitweetr and the possible features that this tool can give you for your daily work. Next slide, please. I have added here some additional material, links either to the code. We also have a preprint. The article is under review on the evaluation of this tool, and also additional information on when the next releases will be happening. We have already planned one by the end of the year with some improvements. So you can also go to the GitHub there, to the forum, and check what are the news for this, and more information in case you are a bit more curious on anything around this tool. Next slide. And thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Laura. I think it's very helpful to see how that tool has been developed, how we can use it in the different contexts. There's 2 questions for you in the chat. The first one, can Epitweetr be used in non-English languages?
Yes, indeed. So Epitweetr has a long list of languages. I wouldn't be fair to say all languages in the world, but let's say that is a huge list. So basically, you can decide which languages to be included. Of course, you would need to then put the keywords in that specific language, and then it depends whether there are tweets or retweets or quotes of that language. But indeed, it can be extended. We currently at ECC are using it with English, Portuguese, Spanish, and French. And I know also other groups have used non-alphanumeric languages, like, for example, Arabic or Greek, and they're also getting data that are useful for their work.
Okay, thank you. And then there was one more question. How does misinformation affect your daily work in epidemic intelligence? You've developed a tool that scans Twitter for signals that can be evaluated for epidemic intelligence. It's a slightly different focus than social listening per se. What would be your advice to others who wish to set up regular online social listening for the purpose of epidemic management?
Yes, so for the first question on how affects misinformation. So as I said, one key step for us after screening and collecting all the possible signals, not only using Epitweetr, but from the different sources, is to validate the information. We need to be sure that the information we collect is valid. And as other speakers have said, if you spread then that information, even by saying it's not true, you may be given more oxygen to the myth or even disinformation. So it's really important for us to ensure that all the information we get is validated and accurate. And in the case that we cannot find the validation from our side, we always have the possibility to contact our network worldwide to check and cross-check facts. And then regarding the second question, I'm just reading it again. Yes, so the added value of Epitweetr, as mentioned, is that we wanted to go one step ahead on not just listening and being passive, but being more active in the sense that, you know, this is what is happening. Please let us know when there's something that can be of relevance, because one of the weaknesses we found on the different tools that were available back in 2019, and that's pre-COVID, maybe it's difficult for all of us to think how things were at that time, is that, you know, there were different servers, different tools that you could go and check from the different dashboard, but then what to do, when to go in, when to check, you know, it would depend on the time of the day, time differences. So with this, we really wanted to have this interaction. So not to have something there that then the human will need to go in, but trying to bridge that gap and connect with the user. And actually one of the aspects that we are now building up in this new iteration of the tool is to include an automated analysis of signals. So with different annotations, then the user will tell the tool, this is some examples. on how these specific signals should be considered, either true or false positive, and then the tool will learn using machine learning algorithms, and then will tell you in an easier way really when you need to focus. So for me, and as I say, it's really important to check what is already there, to build upon what is available. The open source was really a key factor because we gave to the community, but also the community gave it back to us to have this conversation and to make it available to anyone that could be useful, and trying to move all of us together at the same time. So I think those would be my advices.